Thanks to those joining me live and to those joining me on archive. I was looking forward to this fight tomorrow, Demetrius Johnson versus Borg here. The it's one of those when you want to watch something and it's not going to happen. It's not like I'm not going to sit here and tell everybody, oh yeah, I've been following the career of Demetrius Johnson. Like I haven't, but keep hearing about a guy. You start watching YouTube clips, and then you're like, this is his 11th title defense. You're like, all right, let's watch this fight. But anyway, it ain't gonna happen. Okay, it ain't gonna happen. The opponent was deemed too sick to fight, right? I'm pretty sure there's a very good chance this is related to the weight cut, right? Weight cutting has always been brutal, all right? But this is just me. I've been noticing this, and this is me looking at it from the outside, okay? I'm a very casual MMA fan, but one thing I've noticed over the years with mixed martial arts, it's first of all, it's a young sport. It's still developing, but the one thing I've noticed with its athletes is the following, okay? They do some drastic weight cutting. Right? We have dudes that do drastic weight cutting in boxing as well, because obviously we do weigh-ins too, okay? I mean, they follow the same rules we do, all right, in boxing, right? It's our commissions that oversee it. The boxing commissions oversee it, right? The boxing commissions basically what makes mixed martial arts, legal in this country, right? For those that don't know, right? It was with the help of the boxing commissions that we're able to legalize it in most states, I believe already, on all of them, I think. I could be wrong about a couple. But anyway, one thing I've noticed, and this is just me, like I've always talked about this clear observation where guys throughout the progression of their career move down in weight, right? Over 10 years ago in The Ultimate Fighter, right, Rashad Evans was a heavyweight, and then he was a light heavyweight. He was a light heavyweight champion for a while. That was a 205. And then just a couple months ago, I see the guy competing in 185. And just looking at him, something didn't look right. I don't know. That's just me, right? There's other fighters, obviously, that throughout a progression of a career, they move down. Or they lose a couple fights and they move down and weight. It's just, I guess I'm not used to that. I guess I'm not used to that. I'm used to, like in boxing, where guys generally, as their career progresses, they move up in weight. I'm not saying you're not going to find an example here, an example there of a guy moving up to a weight class for a couple fights and moving back down. You're going to find that, okay? You are. But overall, guys move up in weight throughout the progression of their career. I mean, George St. Pierre fighting at middleweight is it's a pleasant surprise because he's actually moving up from welterweight to middleweight. I mean, to me, that's normal. Maybe I'm missing something. Okay, maybe there's something, and I'll admit that I don't understand there, but this is what I do understand. That weight cutting is extremely, extremely dangerous, especially, right? Because wrestlers know how to cut a lot of weight, okay? And like for anyone who's done high school wrestling, collegiate wrestling, you know what I'm talking about, okay? You lose a lot of weight in wrestling, but, okay, in a wrestling match, you're not going to get punched and kicked or anything like that, okay? You're not going to get pounded on. It's not a fist fight. So it's different, okay? I'll say that. Also, in boxing, for the most part, guys have very light legs. Okay, not every single fighter out there, but a lot of the body weight is top heavy from the waist up, right? Where in MMA, these guys, they got these, these thicker thighs and calves, and because they use these to kick and stuff like that. And not all of them, obviously, but that's just a lot more water weight that they cut. Okay, and that's why a lot of them balloon up and weight a lot. But that's not like in boxing. The concern with guys dehydrating themselves so much is the fact that they're not going to get enough oxygen in the brain. Okay, by the time the fight comes. Supposedly, that's why they moved it to day before weigh-in, so guys could have enough time to rehydrate. Okay, but there's an unintended consequence from that. Okay, now one, you can argue that it wasn't really due to the same day weigh-ins. Okay, if you really look at it, and I know Blood Boxing has actually done good videos about this, but in our reality, they started imposing day before weigh-ins because guys weren't making the weight. Okay, it was kind of similar to what's happening with the UFC right now. A lot of fights are getting canceled, and there was big fights on HBO. Some didn't make weight, and all of a sudden, promoters are losing money, HBO is losing money. So it's to say that they didn't make day before weigh-ins. More for business reasons. To say that wasn't the case would be inaccurate. Okay? I'd say at the very least that factor in, right? So then their solution was, okay, well, we'll just do it 24 hours before, right? We'll do it 24 hours before, so if guys think themselves, they have 24 hours plus to rehydrate, right? But then the assumption became, well, they're going to keep doing it the same way they were doing it when we were weighing them the same day. Well, that's just not going to happen. Okay, you're just giving them more time to cut, to rehydrate themselves, which means they're going to take advantage of that, and they're going to be cutting even more weight, right? If they're able to cut more weight and you give them enough time to rehydrate, guess what they're going to do? They're going to try and go even lower. Okay, there's another weight class they can go, because when they rehydrate themselves, they're going to have a substantial size advantage, right? Giving them more time to do it was never the solution, right? It just wasn't. It's not resolving anything. Now, in boxing, things are they make a little more sense in this way, okay? Like I've always heard people, we should just separate all the weight classes by 10 pounds. I always say that's not the answer. That's just not the answer, okay? When you look at the way weight classes should be structured, they should be separated by less pounds in the lower weight classes, but as you move up, you should separate them by more pounds, okay? That's because a pound, okay, matters a lot more in let's say lightweight than it does at middleweight, right? But a pound matters far more to a featherweight than it does to a light heavyweight, okay? That's just the truth, like if we look at it. But in MMA, I'm looking at the weight classes, and they're separated by almost identically. Like I believe they have 205 and then 185, and then they have 170, and then 155, and then 145, and isn't it 135? Like I don't know why they're separating them by the same amount of pounds as they're moving down, right? The lower they go, they should be a little tighter there. There should be less separation of pounds, right? That's my opinion, okay? But secondly, and this is not just, okay, first of all, I've heard some terrible stories. I mean, I've heard stories of Khabib, his liver shut down. I mean, a dude's liver shutting down because he's trying to make a weight cut? That's insane, all right? That's crazy, man, right? I mean, I look at Conor McGregor. I don't know how that guy made it 145 pounds in the UFC. I don't know how he did it. I would look at him in the weigh-ins and I'm like, holy shit. And then he was just a whole other animal, 30 hours later. I mean, it was just insane to me. And it's not just him. It's a lot of fighters. And then, of course, you equate that with fighters that, I mean, I look at Anthony Pettis, who was the lightweight champion in the UFC, right? went through a losing streak, and then what did he do? He moved down in weight. He moved down to featherweight. I mean, I would look at interviews of his, and he looked like a fucking skeleton. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here, right? I don't even remember how he did in that weight class. I don't follow it like that, but it's like anytime the answer is, well, let's move down a weight so we can have a size advantage. And I think that there's something wrong with the structure if their philosophy is, well, if I'm failing, the answer isn't improving my skill set. The answer isn't maybe, having a change in my game plan, working in the holes in my game. No, the answer is moving down an additional weight class, even though I haven't never fought in that weight class or whatnot. So I can be a bigger man the night of the fight. I think there's something wrong with that. Okay? I think there's something odd about the fact that what these guys walk around at and what they're weighing in at is astonishing to me. It just is. Like, we'll have cases like that in boxing, but it's a dude that's out of shape and balloons up in weight, yo-yos in weight, right? Or it's like a case like a Chavez Jr. or something like that. In MMA, it's been an issue lately, man. It's been an issue. What is it? We can argue all day what the short-term solution is. I know what the long-term solution is, right? The long-term solution, no one wants to hear the long-term solution, right? Everybody's stuck in their ways. Nobody wants to listen. Everybody's just stuck in their ways, all right? I know what the long-term solution is. The problem with the long-term solution, it's going to have some short-term consequences, okay? It's going to be very inconvenient short-term for a lot of fighters, right? That I understand. But in the long run, it's going to benefit everybody, okay? And this is going to cause a gasp, okay? And it's going to make everybody go, no, we can't do that, no! But this is just my honest opinion, right? The answer to all this shit, and we have some of this in boxing, right? We had Brandon Rios look like a fucking ghost in some of his fights. We've had fighters that had to vacate belts because they can't make the weight. These guys are being given all that time to dehydrate themselves and rehydrate. Some of them have vacated titles so they can't make weight. The shit's insane, okay? What we need to do in combat sports, right? And I don't care what anybody says, the long-term solution is same-day weigh-in, right? No, but you can't do that. No. Same-day weigh-in is a long-term solution, okay? That's a long-term solution. And I know the reason you think it wouldn't work is because you're assuming the guys at that point are going to be dehydrating themselves the same way they're doing it now, okay? There may be some cases like that, and of course that will be dangerous. Of course, there'll still be situations where guys can't make weight. Of course, you're not going to fix the entire problem, right? Right? But overall, it'll be better, okay? Number one, you would get rid of these extraordinary weight disparities, okay? You would get rid of that. It's not right, okay? One of the reasons diuretics are used a lot in the sport because guys want to cut out a bunch of water weight, right? And they're able to balloon up in weight enormously, right? If you have a same-day weigh-in, okay, you're practically fixing the diuretic problem, right? That's number one. Number two, if you build a culture, that's the important word here, around the importance, okay, of being in shape, okay, and guys fighting at their natural weight. That's really all we have to do, okay? A same-day weigh-in will force fighters to fight at their natural weight, okay? At that point, you don't need as many weight classes, okay? You know why? Because there's no such thing as, there's something very eerie and unnatural about, okay, the weight class is, let's say in boxing, 147, and everybody weighs in at 147 on the dot. And then they start sucking on Gatorade and water, okay, because they lost all that water weight. Well, never do both guys weigh exactly the same once they come in their natural, weight the next day. Once they rehydrate, they don't weigh exactly the same, right? But if those two guys are weighing in at that weight, they would both be fighting, okay, within the same division anyway, right? So what you need to do here, and I invite anybody. You guys use BoxRec all the time. Okay, that's all you fucking do all the time. Look at BoxRec. Okay, so look at BoxRec. Look up some welterweight fights, right? During the age of same-day weigh-ins. Okay, go ahead and look that up. The limit was 147. That was the limit. Okay, that was the limit. But we had a weight. It was from 135 to 147. That was anything over 135 was welterweight. Anything over 147 was middleweight. All right. Guys would come in at 143 in the scale. Some guys will come in at 139. Some guys will come in at 142. All right. They didn't come in at exactly 147, right on the dot. Okay. You had some fighters that did it. And they would rehydrate like maybe a couple pounds, all right? Those were, of course, that would happen. But overall, you would see guys weigh differently depending on the circumstance of the fight, okay? If they needed more speed, they came in a little lighter. They needed more power, they come in a little heavier, right? There was a such thing as this is the limit, and anything below that is the weight class, right? Now, that mentality is lost. Most boxing fans today don't understand that because we're so used to this day before weigh-in. You're so used to it that you think it's normal. Okay, that's what's happening here. You think it's completely normal, right? They did it in boxing for decades. They did it for decades, right? They did it for decades, right? They did it in boxing for decades, and it worked just fine. Did fights get canceled all the time? It was rare. Okay, and they fought more often, right? So now, obviously, if you don't want to do same-day weigh-in, fine, but we need to find a solution, right? If that means, like in my opinion, these guys should be weighed in 10 days before the fight. In boxing and MMA, 10 days before the fight, you should be at a certain weight. Just in case, if you're not, then the promoter has time to fill in the gap right there, right? Sure, 10 days is a very short notice. It really is. But I'd rather have 10 days than find out at the weigh-in that a fight's not going to happen, right? I'd rather at least have 10 days to know, right? And if you're going to weigh them in 10 days before the fight, and let's say you take a percentage, okay? You have to take a percentage of the weight and where you want them. It's because every weight class is different, okay? And we could figure that out. But if we're not going to do same-day weigh-ins, they need to monitor these guys' weights once they sign for a fight, okay? Meaning, once the fight's official, signed and delivered, they get on a scale, okay? And they write down what the guys weigh. And they tell them, okay, you guys, by this date, you need to be at this weight. By this date, we're going to come, we're going to weigh you, you got to be at this weight. And they got to start managing that weight, right? I don't know why they don't do it when they go fucking, drug test them. Get them on the fucking scale, right? And if they're showing no progression, right? And they're not where they're supposed to be, then fuck it. If 10 days out, you weigh them in and you determine at that point, look, man, you still got 15 pounds of cut, and we're only 10 days before the fight. That's not safe. We're going to have to cancel this fight. At that point, Dana White maybe has 10 days to figure out what he's going to do. Okay, it's still a problem. 10 days is a very short notice, but it's better than, hey, we're going to just fuck it, cancel the fucking fight. You'll be surprised how many fights in boxing and MMA have been made with a 10 days notice, and some of them ended up being great fights, right? Might as well give yourself that shot. They got to manage it somehow. Like, it's got to get managed. It's got to get managed. There's no dudes' livers should not be shutting down, okay, in training camp and cutting weight. That's just not normal. Okay, that's crazy. Okay, dude should not look like Brandon Reels looked in one of his fights, okay, where he was fucking pale. Okay, dude should not be looking pale at the weigh-in. They should not look like fucking Skeletor at the weigh-in, all right? They should test everything, man. This is something that needs to get managed. Okay, and if they manage it and they keep fighters on their toes, and a fighter realizes, oh fuck, I can't do that. I can't do that weight cut. Then fuck it. Guess what? You're gonna have to fight guys your size. That's what you're gonna have to fucking do. All right. I mean, the reality is everybody believes that in every weight class, everybody should be the same size. You do understand that human beings, we're all built differently, right? Our metabolism is different, okay? Okay, our genes are different. How we cut weight is different. Okay, how much muscle mass we have and all that, or what way we're healthy is different. Okay, we're all different, right? Heavyweight, you have small heavyweights, you have big heavyweights, right? There was a time in boxing where everybody understood that there's a such thing as a big middleweight and a small middleweight. There was a such thing as a big welterweight and a small welterweight. Okay, people don't understand that concept now. Like, everybody thinks everybody's got to weigh on the dot, weigh exactly the same, be the exact same weight. Like, it's just that's not realistic, all right? And that's not even the case. That is a facade, right? They may weigh at the scale the same, but how they rehydrate and how much water weight they put back on, very rarely do they weigh exactly the same on fight night. Usually there's anywhere from a 5 to 10 pound difference on fight night. And that's perfectly fine. Like, it's especially like in the higher weight classes. It's especially then. Like, everybody understands it when we talk about heavyweight. Everybody understands it. But all of a sudden, we talk about other weight classes where there's a weight limit, and people they don't understand the concept because you're stuck in this day before weigh-in era where you think it's normal for guys to weigh on the dot, and then like you put yourself in this fictional world where they rehydrate themselves and they weigh this and they're the exact same size on fight night. That's just not a reality. That's not something that's going to happen, right? Okay, that's just the truth. This has to be managed and it has to be dealt with before somebody fucking dies, okay? It's not necessary for somebody to die for this issue to get fixed, okay? It's just not necessary, because if somebody dies, it's going to be worse, okay? What's the answer going to be then? Are we going to start weighing them in 48 hours before the fight? Guess what they're going to do? They're going to cut even more weight because they're going to have even more time to rehydrate. You don't think that's dangerous? Of course it's dangerous. The answer isn't adding more time, or the weight class that they fight. It should be the weight that they are in the fucking ring or in the cage. That should be it. We need to get it as close to that as possible. Now, like I said, it's going to be very inconvenient. That's why a lot of fighters aren't for it, because a lot of them have mastered the art of ballooning up in weight and cutting weight, and then they have a size advantage in night of fight. They like it, right? Well, good for them. But the fact of the matter is that there's a problem. There's a very serious problem here. Doctors are looking at these fighters. They look pale, okay? They're having a hard time drawing blood for them because they're that dehydrated. You understand how dehydrated you got to be to not be able to take blood out of an athlete? Especially like MMA fighters and boxers who really work out their arms a lot, okay, are very toned and defined there. You could see the fucking veins, okay? If you can't take out blood from there, if you're having a hard time putting an IV on them, they're fucking dehydrated, okay? They must be very dehydrated, I'm sorry. And then there's other dangers to that, because when someone loses that much weight in a short period of time, right, it takes time because you have less oxygen in the brain, you have less oxygen in your body, right? And you got to bring that in, right? Because of a lot of that water weight you lost. Your brain is kind of like, all right, if you understand, like, of course you have the cranium, you have the skull, right? And this is a big concern in boxing because you get hit in the head that many times. But it's also a concern in MMA because they also throw punches, they even kick in the head, right? The brain is basically sitting right there. Like, it's not like, it's a little wobbly, it moves, okay? And the less oxygen is in there, when somebody gets hit, I mean, that can cause permanent brain damage, okay? This isn't like something to play with. It just isn't. Fighters are always going to try to find an advantage. They're always going to try and, work the system. That's always going to be the case, all right? So no matter what you're doing for safety reasons, someone is going to try to take advantage of it, okay, to their benefit, all right? Here's what we need to do, right? The challenge is, what do we need to do to make sure that fighters are not cutting ridiculous amounts of weight, especially 24 hours before the fight, and make sure that they're never going to be identically the same in the ring, but that they're at a reasonable weight range apart from one another, and finally, to make sure that ultimately what it's gonna come down to is skill and who the better fighter is. No, not the weight, not anything like that. Like 90% of what dictates who's going to win is going to be who brought the right strategy, who was the most skilled fighter, right? That's the challenge. Of course, fighters are going to look for size advantages. Of course, fighters are going to look for all types of advantages, right? Well, you put a day before weigh-in in place, well, of course they're going to take advantage of that. Even if someone with a kind heart said, oh, no, they're dehydrating themselves, we should give them 24 hours so they can all, recoup and rehydrate themselves again, right? Like, you don't think somebody was going to take advantage of that? Come on. Of course you're going to take advantage of that. Like, we've seen it in boxing, and although I don't follow MMA like that, I do know that a sport where guys, when they find themselves to a point where they can't win anymore, they start moving down in weight, and weight classes separated in some cases by 20 pounds, 10 pounds. That is problematic, and that's not a good thing, okay? If somebody's liver is shutting down because they're trying to cut weight, then you shouldn't be at that weight class. Your body's not responding to that, okay? Like, I don't care how dangerous you think fighting a bigger man in the ring is. It's not going to be as dangerous as your liver shutting down. So maybe they got to figure out, like, I think MMA has it very well done in the higher up of the weight classes, but in the lower weight classes, they got it all wrong. They got it all wrong, right? It's the weight classes should be separated by less pounds the lower you go. Okay, there's a science behind that. Okay, but it's just much smaller men with less muscle mass, and all those things equate and they matter. Okay, but with that said, that's all we got to say about that. All right, I get it. We're probably never going to bring back the same day weigh-in, but something has to happen. Monitoring these weights should be happening. All right, it should be happening. So that's my opinion. All right, and the UFC, right? They're running the business, right? So it benefits them, right? Pay somebody a couple thousand to monitor dudes' weights and don't lose hundreds of thousands in the process. Okay, that's what I think. If Demetrius Johnson's opponent was weighed in 10 days ago, and they determined, bro, man, you're not looking good. You got a lot of weight to cut. We're going to be back tomorrow. If we don't see some type of improvement here, we're going to have to cut the fight. Then maybe Dana White and the UFC would have at least 10 days or so to figure out what they're going to do about that. Maybe they don't find an opponent anyway, But at the very least, you give yourself a chance to maybe get an opponent to come in, right? So, hey, what are you going to do? Right? They got to figure that out. They got to figure that out. Everything's a learning curve. Everything's a learning process, but they got to start monitoring these weights. All right, guys. This is DStyleBoxing. I'm out.